Welcome to the WagerTalk podcast for the week ending May 6th. We have a big show lined up this week as Matthew Holt, VP of Business Development for CG Technology, will be stopping by to talk some NFL and Kentucky Derby action. Ralph Michaels and Dave Cokin join me in studios. We're going to preview the Friday night NBA card and take a look at the weekend baseball lineup. And, of course, at the end of the show, we will get a best bet from each of us. These best bets on an 8-4 run over the last 4 weeks. And, of course, behind the controls, the man that makes us sound good, Mark Seidel. I'm your host, Marco D'Angelo. Let's get it started, guys. And let's bring in Matthew Holt. Matthew, so formal. Matt, how you doing, buddy?
Gentlemen, how are we doing this afternoon?
It's for me, we're going to be talking some Kentucky Derby in a little bit. Couple days away. I feel like a kid, a couple days from Christmas. We're getting to Christmas Eve. This is the time of the year I like. Slow time for sports, a little bit slower for sports for us, and I love getting those big races for the summertime. But we had a big event last week, the NFL draft. I wanted to ask you, how was the betting on the draft props, and did the house win or lose last week? I know that we talked about it with some of the other books around town. The Baker Mayfield going early in the draft for the number one pick was probably the worst kept secret in the NFL the last 48 hours. How did that affect you guys?
Yeah, it wasn't that bad for us. And to be honest, the props themselves for the draft were not, while they continue to grow, and certainly this is the biggest they've ever been in Nevada, the limits are still fairly low on them. And the fact that that the Nevada Gaming Control Board doesn't allow anyone to take bets on the day of the draft means that there's a lot of lost action there. Where we saw a ton of action, actually, was on all the ancillary products that we had put out the day before the draft on Wednesday, which was NFL season win totals, yes, no to make the playoffs, division odds. That's where we tended to see a lot of action on those type of bets.
And let's focus on one team, because I'm telling you what, I really didn't think it would be this team. I thought the Houston Texans might be the team that drew the most positive early season action, because Watson will be back at quarterback, and I think a lot of people expect a turnaround. But it's the team, the Orphans, the former San Diego, soon-to-be Los Angeles, and presently Carson Chargers. Holy cow. They're betting this. This is crazy, Matt. They're betting the Chargers like the season's been played already.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I'm with you. I thought it was going to be Houston as well, and they ended up number 3 on that list, not surprisingly. The Chargers, number 1. Bears, number 2, actually. Then Houston, number 3, and then a little love for the Cleveland Browns. They are at 4. So interestingly enough, you're right. I'm not 100% sure. I know that they went on that big run the end of last year, and we saw it with Jacksonville a few years ago, where they closed on a big run. People bet them the next year, and they were terrible. They were a season early betting Jacksonville. We've seen it happen several times here with teams. But for whatever reason, they are all over the Chargers this year. And you're right, it is not even close in terms of liability, in terms of season win totals, yes, no to make the playoffs. Number 1 is L.A. Chargers, and it's by a pretty good margin.
Matt, I guess at this time of the year when you're getting future bets and season win totals, it's more of the category that you would put some of the sharp players category betting at this time of the year than the recreational players. Sure, you get guys that visit town. If a Steeler fan's in town, they're going to plunk $100 down so they can root the Steelers all year. But the majority of the betting, would you say, is sharp?
So normally I would 100% agree with you, and it's still the majority of the betting, yes. But in past years, you could say, look, as high as 85, 90% of the betting was sharp early on. But because of the popularity of this NFL draft, and because we were the only ones with season win totals and then all these other type of wagers up in town, we actually saw a ton of action on this stuff, a lot more public action than normal. Because if you're going to go out and watch the draft, you want to be able to bet something. And the problem was, no matter where you went and watched the draft in Las Vegas, nobody was taking bets on the draft that night. They had to shut them off the night before per Nevada Gaming Control Board laws. So the fact that we had all these extra bets up that night, our books were packed, and we were actually taking a lot more public action than normal, and it didn't hurt that the Golden Knights were playing at the same time as the draft.
Yeah, I didn't think about that, but I'm surprised how much public action, because generally the public doesn't want to tie their money up for that long unless it's like that recreational bet that your team.
I'll suggest, and Matt, you know this better than I do, but it's not credit betting, because you've had to put the money in the account, obviously. But there's still a difference in having to walk up to the window and take money out of your pocket to physically bet, and seeing all this stuff on the app, and you've got funds already in there, where all you have to do is click, and you're watching the draft anyway, and you've got opinions coming out of this. I think that has a lot to do with people jumping right in and making some opinions now, because it's almost like you're not tying. You are, but you're not really tying your money up for 6 months, because you never had to take any more money out of your pocket to make the bet.
Absolutely, or make the trip to a book.
Yep.
And I absolutely agree with that. And I tend to find I do it myself. You'll end up with a weird number like, $2,172. Suddenly you're betting $12 on a future, right? And it's just one of those things. I've even done it myself in the past, where you're more apt to bet a future. You watch a team or you watch a game and you go, boy, I think this team really could make a run. Next thing you know, you're just looking at the future prices to see what they are. You find one you like. You don't have to make a trip. You're right. The futures market in general in all sports has significantly gone up, as the amount of dollars wagered on accounts has also gone up.
Matt, how much was bet on the season win totals from the Sharps? How much will we see the win totals move now? And do you see much movement until the camps start in July, or do you just start getting money in and it stays at a normal pace?
So we always take money early, and this is how these kind of things go. So there's an initial rush of people who say our numbers are off from their numbers, because they don't really have anything else to compare it to, because we're the only ones out. Then other people come out, and of course they tend to come out and stay pretty close to the people who already come out, but there's differences. So guys that find opportunities to maybe get a middle or even get a better price or hedge off some of it will come back, and we'll see action off the difference in numbers. Then the market really settles, where all the numbers tend to be pretty close, because the guys that could either scalp or land big middles take advantage of that. The numbers collapse, and you kind of have settled market numbers. And what happens now is, now that we have settled market numbers, really most of the NFL season wins wagering the rest of the year leading up till the preseason will be information-based. And what I mean by that is a player gets in trouble in the offseason, or a player gets hurt, or something happens to make them want to bet against the team, or that the team's going to get better, or trade. You don't see a lot of trades this time of year, but it's going to be information-based. Suspensions, injuries, etc., that say, oh, my goodness, this team's in trouble now, and because they're in trouble, this other team may also do better. But yeah, from now until the end of July, it's mostly information-based movements.
Matt, moving along to the Kentucky Derby, many consider horse racing a dying sport, but when it comes to the Derby, the excitement level on this race is as strong as ever, and it's a crazy scene around town with people, because it becomes a party. People want to be a part of it. It's an event, and speaking of events, you guys are putting on at the Cosmo tomorrow at the Sportsbook. And if anybody hasn't been to the Cosmo Sportsbook, it's literally the closest sportsbook in Las Vegas to actually going out to the Las Vegas Strip. You literally walk in 2 steps off of Las Vegas Boulevard, and you're in a very fun, hip atmosphere, and love the TV setups there. And you can sit there and watch the games and be minutes from the strip, or steps from the Strip. Tell us about what's going on tomorrow.
Yeah, so we're hosting a betting seminar tomorrow. I know that you're part of it. You're part of the panel. I actually have another obligation. I had to bow out of that panel myself, as I have a project I'm working on. But, it's always a great panel. To your point, look, the Kentucky Derby is always a party. People always want to know what's happening. This is a great way to find out. Take the intimidation factor out of betting on the Kentucky Derby. We'll teach you how to go up and make your bets, whether it's win, play, show, exacta, trifecta, whatever it is you're looking to bet. And then people kind of give opinions on horses. I will say this, in most years I 100% agree with you, that regardless of the regression of horse racing as a whole, in the United States, this race normally has a huge build-up around it. But I'll tell you, part of the build-up around it the last, I think, 6 or 7 years has been that it's kind of been a dual Derby fight night atmosphere. And, we're so used to seeing Floyd Mayweather or Canelo Alvarez or one of these monster fights where people watch the Derby at 3 and then they keep partying right up on until they go watch the fight. Losing that Triple G Canelo fight, I wasn't sure it was going to have an impact on the Derby when it happened, when they announced that Canelo was suspended. But this is the lowest amount of buildup I've seen for Derby weekend in years, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we don't have a fight that night, and we have one of the bigger favorites we've seen in quite a while in the Derby itself.
Yeah, talking about that favorite, that horse is Justify. This is a horse that's only raced 3 times, and he's going to be racing against history. Everybody knows the curse of Apollo, and that is that no horse that hasn't raced as a 2-year-old has won the Kentucky Derby. That goes back to 1882, and if I heard correctly, you had really good seats, Dave, for that, didn't you?
No, I wasn't around for that one. I only go back as far as Man of War. I did not know about that. But how many horses have raced in the Derby that haven't raced as a 2-year-old?
There's been several. I don't have the exact total, and that's something I got to look up.
Is it one of those? Is it a trend that actually means something, or is it just one of those? Well, it really hasn't happened that often, because I'm trying to think of any horses in the last several years.
There's been a horse almost every year in the Derby that hasn't.
I would agree with that. I would agree that there's at least one every year, usually a couple.
We actually have 2 in this year's Derby, but Justify is the horse that's getting all of the attention. He's done everything, Matt, that you could ask of a horse. The problem is he really hasn't faced anybody yet. He finally faced Bolt Doro in the Santa Anita Derby, but it was a small field. There was only 7 horses in that field. His first 2 races were special maiden weight races, which were, decent horses, but nothing like what he's going to face in the Kentucky Derby. He handled Bolt Doro rather easily, but the thing of it is, Bolt Doro didn't need any points to get into the Derby. He already had his place locked in. So, it was a nice training trip for him to go out around and finish second to this horse. Justify had to win that race to get the points to get into the Derby. What do you make of this horse? Can he run against the bias of not racing it too?
Well, let's face it, the Kentucky Derby favorites the last several years have had a lot of success. This was a race known for its underdog winners for so long that we have been chalk for, I think, 4 straight years now. So it's been a chalky race lately. Let's face it, for every single guy who picks up the racing form, even if they don't know what every number means, when they see that 114 speed buyer next to Justify, that is a number that's really hard to ignore. That is flying. That is some unbelievable numbers. All 3 of his races, he ran over 100 buyer. Being the guy that I am, I'm obviously going to try to beat him. And I looked at some long shots this year. I looked at number 19, Noble Indy, with Florent Garreau on him as a horse that ran 100 in his last race, coming off a Louisiana Derby win. Looks like he might like the distance as a horse that maybe beat him as a real long shot. Number 5, Audible, another horse, ran a 107, 105 previously, winning the Florida Derby and the Holy Bull. That's a horse that has awesome connections with Todd Pletcher and Javier Castellano. That's one that I'm looking to play. And I'm with you. Bolt Doro, to me, isn't completely dead in this race just because he ran second to Justify in the Santa Anita Derby. I think this is a horse, when he gives his best effort, can certainly keep up with Justify. And as you know, anytime there's 20 horses in a race, anything can happen. You get bumped at the start. You get mud kicked in your face. There's so many things that can happen with these horses. So I'm certainly going to be looking to play against them and use some of these prices.
Yeah, I'm going to be looking to play against them as well, Matt. I'm not going to leave them off my ticket because I don't want them to run me over and knock me out of the try. I will have them in the exotics. In a couple other things that I fear with him only having 3 races, this horse has never left Santa Anita. All 3 races were at Santa Anita. So now he's got to do something else for the first time. He's got to travel across country. in all three of the races. He controlled the pace. He was on the front end. He is not going to be on the front end in the Kentucky Derby because the 3-horse, Promises Fulfilled, is going to be out there winging it just like he was in the Florida Derby. Justify will probably be running clear in a second because this other horse puts up, in the Florida Derby, put up suicide fractions, and it's what set up the race for all the closers. There's a horse I just want to ask you about. You didn't mention, and it's a horse that I'm giving a good look to, and he's kind of fighting a little bit of history too, and that is the number 14, Mendelssohn. Everybody knows that the horses that come from overseas, come from Dubai, out of the UEA Derby, have not fared well in the Kentucky Derby. However, this horse has a couple different things that the other horses didn't have. This horse has already made this cross-continent trip before. Last year, he raced October 14th overseas. They shipped him for the first week in November to race in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Race. He wins that race on a short turnover, October 14th to November 3rd or 4th. That's quick for horses, especially a 2-year-old, and he handled that. Also, a factor is in Egypt and that in Dubai, they race with more weight. Because he's been such a prohibitive favorite, he has already won races carrying a weight of 126, 131, and 134. They're going to all be racing carrying a weight of 126 in the Kentucky Derby. No horse in the Derby other than him has won a race carrying more than 124 pounds. That's a big advantage for this horse, and I'm giving him a big shot in this race on Saturday.
Yeah, and I don't think it hurts your case here that you have a jockey in Ryan Moore who is absolutely obsessed with the Kentucky Derby. A lot of times some of these European jockeys, they tend to brush off the Kentucky Derby, brush off some of these American tracks. They're more concerned with the Derby than they are the Derby. But not Ryan Moore. He is obsessed with this race. I mean, I've heard it over and over and over from the folks over there in Europe about how much actually winning this race means to him. And we know how much it means to Aidan O'Brien, who continues to enter horses in it from over there. You're right, they haven't had a lot of success in the past. And unfortunately, this short price is scaring me away a little bit. The opening morning lines odds 3-1 on the favorite Justify, only 5-1 on the 14. I would have liked a little bit longer price considering he's bucking a lot of trends in terms of the European and in the Dubai winners. But you're right, this horse has been awful impressive so far. And I think that the number 6, Good Magic, too, with Chad Brown and Jose Ortiz, is a horse that's going to be awful hard to ignore. That would probably be my number 4 if I was going to throw a 4th horse into the mix for me as well. I don't think we could ignore that one, number 6.
I'm glad you brought him up because that's a horse I was going to throw at you. I have him as my long shot horse, Good Magic, at 12-1. I love the way this horse has been brought into this race. I love Chad Brown. He learned his trade under one of the best in the business. And you look at what he has done. That Fountain of Youth race, he had 3 starts at 2, which is a great foundation. They gave him a break. They brought him back in February, raced him in the Fountain of Youth, and the horse finished 3rd. And Chad Brown came right out and said he wasn't 100% cranked up yet. We could have had another training trip or 2 in him, but Chad Brown, learning from Bobby Frankel, he knows not to rush the horse, got the horse 3rd, had a good foundation, and then in the next race, they raced this horse in the Bluegrass, and he just exploded in the stretch for the win. And you go back to the 3-year-old or the 2-year-old season, his 3rd start, after not winning a race, they entered him as a maiden in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile last year, the most prestigious race for 2-year-olds in the country. They thought enough of him to put him in as a maiden. He entered that race as a maiden, and he came out as a Breeders' Cup champion, and he just exploded in the stretch, and he has the perfect style for the Derby. He's a stalking horse. He has good tactical speed, which will get him out and get him in that stalking just off the pace setters, and he can make his move whenever he wants. And I love the horse. I think he's set up for a big race on Saturday.
Yeah. And to your point, we talked about how, number 7, Justify, hadn't really beat anybody. The only Derby horse he's beaten is Volt d'Oro. But when you look at Good Magic, he's beaten 6 Derby horses who also finished in the top 3 in the show money, at least, in his last 4 races. So, he's gone out there, battle-tested against this field, and had that much success. And one of the things I always look for, too, is I figure if you're going to win the Derby, you have to have at least run 100-plus speed buyer at least once in your career, so we know you can do it, because you're going to have to do it here to win this race. And that race that you just talked about, that Breeders' Cup Juvenile race, Buck 05 speed figure, shows me that he has the kick here that it takes to win this race. And he's already proven it against several of these contenders. I think he's really hard to ignore.
Marco and Matt, as a novice horse racing bettor, I checked the weather before I came. 50% rain Friday, 70% when we get to post time. Does rain affect the horse, or just when the track conditions change?
It does affect the horse, and it has a lot of effects. The track conditions, to your point, have a big part to do with it. Is it sloppy? Is it muddy? But even if it's just raining, the surface of the dirt changes a little bit, and that dirt tends to clump up and kick up. And what happens is all of a sudden those horses that sit right off the pace, when they get mud kicked in their face, especially these 2-year-olds, some of them who have never had mud kicked up in their face before, some of them don't like it, and you don't always know how they're going to react to it. So to me, what the weather means in a race like this, with so many 3-year-old horses who have such few starts under their belt, is it just brings a little bit of the unknown into it, because you could try to act like you know how these horses are all going to react when they're getting mud kicked in their face, but until they're out there and they actually have mud kicked in their face, you don't really know.
Anybody know, who Sister Jean likes in this race? Get some information there.
We, divine intervention.
Put in a call to Loyola and find out if she likes all sports, so why not?
Matt, a pleasure having you on board. Sorry I'm not going to do that seminar with you. That was fun last year, but I'm glad we were able to get you on here and get some of your insights for the Derby. Always appreciate you stopping by, and you can follow Matt Holt at Matthew Holt VP on Twitter. Great follow, good information from Matt. And as always, buddy, appreciate you coming on, and I hope to talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys. Best of luck this weekend. Take care.
Well, okay. What were you going to go with?
Marco, why don't you tell us about it now? We had great success with the Derby last time. Tell us about your Derby special and the success you had last year.
Don't worry. I wasn't going to forget that later, but since we're talking to Derby, I'll throw it out right now, Ralph. Everybody, we've talked about it everywhere. We turned $390 into over $9,000 last year in the Kentucky Derby. We're offering a package at WagerTalk. You can get the Derby package for $39. That'll get you whatever my top sports play is on Saturday. If it's an NBA or a baseball game, whatever I decide for the Saturday card is my best play, I'm going to put that in the package, and you will get my complete Kentucky Derby. I'll have a write-up and analysis about my top horses, what I think about them, and then I'll give you the actual betting strategies that you'll be able to just go to the window and read off the list and make your plays. If you want an even better deal than the $39 package on Saturday, you can get a 7-day package at WagerTalk. That'll include all of my baseball, all of my basketball, and, of course, the Kentucky Derby. Normally $99 if you use coupon code Derby25. We will give you $25 off that package, just $74. And my sports plays that you're going to be getting along with that, we're currently on a 36-18 run with the plays, and we're up 56% over the last 33 days. So thanks for sliding that in, Ralph. I appreciate that. I'll be sure to return the favor later in the podcast when we talk about your streaks and Dave's streaks. That's going to be it for the first segment. When we come back, guys, Friday night NBA action. We're going to break down both games for you. We'll be back in a minute.
It's Manic Monday, and that means every pick at WagerTalk.com is just $9. Get a play in any sport valued at up to $30 for just $9 each and every Monday at WagerTalk.com.
Welcome back to the Wager Talk podcast. It's NBA action for Friday night. We're going to get things started, guys. Golden State heads to New Orleans. Dave, I'm going to go to you.
Right.
The zigzag, it worked in Game 2. We talked about it on the radio show that day that, Golden State, they came out with a purpose in Game 1. They were hearing all about they can't get the job done. They're going to struggle without Curry. They showed a message, but then Game 2, lo and behold, Curry comes back. That line balloons up, and what happens? Golden State wins, but they don't cover. How do you see this moving forward? Down 2-0, we know these teams going home, they're going to come out fired up.
And the angle has been really good so far. I think there's only been one game where it missed, where the team trailing 2-0 at home, Game 3, they're the play-on side for the first half. And you would expect the Pelicans fans are going to be revved up and ready to go in this game. Golden State certainly is a team that can blow that up. The one team that did cover on the road in Game 3 after leading 2-0, it was the Golden State Warriors against San Antonio.
Without Pop. That was the game. That was the game Pop missed.
But the fact is that San Antonio came out smoking in that game, led by 6 early, and then Golden State said, "Okay, enough of that." And they're a scary team to go against. But that trend is really clear over the past few years. I mean, the record's just absurdly good on it. So until that starts to trade the other way, I think you either have to consider New Orleans first half or nothing.
Ralph, you're looking at this one, and after missing all that time, Curry comes in. He scores 28 points in 27 minutes. And the team, now that he's been back a game, should have even more continuity because looked like he never missed a beat, but they just kind of looked a little bit off with the rotations and everything because you were playing one way for, how many weeks in a row, and then now you bring a star back. Everybody's got to just, figure out, again, what their new role is. Do you think that had a problem in Game 2, and do you see that to be better in Game 3?
Well, the one advantage Golden State had is that Curry practiced for the previous 2 weeks. So he didn't come off an injury, not practice, walk on the court. But obviously, they played differently with him. He was plus 26 points, so that means they were minus 18 when he wasn't on the court. And if you look at their real percentage shooting, they were 70% with Curry on the court, 40% without him. Now they have to make the transition. Curry played 26 or 28 minutes in that game. I'm sure he can play a little more here, but how much you want to play him is the question. So, it'll be up to the Pelicans to get off to a quick start to try to keep Curry from not being the leading scorer. I think that's the key. If they can keep Curry from not being the leading scorer, the Pelicans have a great chance to win. They're going to have to play the perfect game. When you have a Golden State team with 4 all-star players and 2 MVPs, you just don't have the horses to compete with them day in and day out. But in this spot, I think they can hang with them.
How about this total, guys? 230 for the total on this one. They just keep raising it up. Ralph, can they put a number high enough with these teams? It looks like it's going to be a track meet again.
Well, I think there was 30-some games with a total of 230 this year. The Pelicans were involved in 5 of those games. They actually went 5-0 to the over with a total of 230 or over. Golden State was involved in 14 of those games. They went 6-6-2, so they split out on their games. If the Pelicans want to run their pace and if the Pelicans get out to an early lead, I think it's going to be an over. If the Pelicans fall behind, I think Golden State might slow the pace a little bit, and I would lean to the under.
All right. For me, I know that the Pelicans are going to come out with fire, that first quarter and that, and I agree with they could even have the lead at halftime. But I just think in that first game, you saw the Warriors come out with something to prove. I think just mentally, the fact that Curry came back. Curry was pumped up, no question, but I just think everybody else relaxed just a touch. I think we're going to see a total team effort in Game 3, and I think that when it's all said and done, the Warriors pull away in the second half. I'm not going to get in front of this team right now. They're looking awful good, and I think we'll be definitely seeing them in the Western Conference Finals and probably in the NBA Finals once again.
I agree with that. I think right now the Warriors are the money. I think you get bet a minus 120 to win it all, and I think there's value in that. That's how good they are. Pelicans this year is a home dog, 4-7 straight up. And they went 6-5 ATS. 3 of those games were the first 3 in the season when people didn't know how good they were. They only went 3-5 ATS down the stretch as a home dog.
All right, moving to the other one on Friday night. Interesting game. We've got a 1-1 series here. You got Houston, the number 1 seed. They're minus 3.5 on the road. Easy win for them in Game 1. Game 2 wasn't that way, Ralph. You look at this one, the zigzag worked in both of these 2 series. How do you see Game 3 setting up, going back to Utah?
Well, you look at the way Houston shot. They have not shot well. They shot 48% or less in 4 of the games against Minnesota. And in the first game, they shot over that, but they didn't in the second. So Houston is not the same offensive team we've seen midseason. They're getting graded the same way. They're having the same ATS lines, the same total lines. But I am convinced that if we see anything from Joe Ingles like he did in 7 3-pointers and, Mitchell with 11 assists, he leads that team. And D'Antonio even said Mitchell ate us alive with his 11 assists. So to be a rookie and be able to handle that team and be able to done what he's done, taking over for Rubio, it's amazing. I think Utah now can actually win this game and perhaps the next 2.
You're looking at this, and one thing that concerns me with Houston right now, we're starting to see an old habit return with the D'Antonio's team. They're not playing any defense right now, and that was something that surprised me during the season. They were playing much better defense than I thought they were. We know this team's going to score with all the weapons they have, but now they're back to that, and we've seen it with his teams over the years. You score a lot of points, but you don't play defense. You can't win in the playoffs with that formula, and we've talked all year about the defense of Utah. Now Utah, all of a sudden, is playing some offense. They're scoring over 100 points, and this is a team that I don't want to get in front of right now. I think they got a good shot to take this game on Game 3, and if they do go up 2-1 in this series, all that pressure is going to be on Houston because you rolled all season long. You were the best team in the NBA. You had that record. You played hard because you wanted that record. Golden State, we know, the last month of the season, they gave up on chasing the number 1 seed. They didn't care. It was something that Houston wanted. They're going to start hearing footsteps and start second-guessing themselves, and they could find themselves out of the playoffs.
If the season had started February 1st and we looked at the team's body of work from then till now, Utah would have been the favorite in this game.
Yeah, I like Utah. That's where I'm looking for Saturday. All right, guys, we're going to step out for a quick break. When we come back, we've got some baseball for the weekend. We're going to preview 3 games for you. We'll be right back here on the Wager Talk podcast.
Every Tuesday, WagerTalk.com offers a best bet selection from its hottest handicapper. It's a great way to introduce yourself to WagerTalk.com with a big best bet winner for just $2 on $2 Tuesday.
Welcome back to the Wager Talk podcast. We're heading to the Major League Baseball Friday night action. We've got the Colorado Rockies at the New York Mets. And I'm going to head to you first, Dave. The Mets, they opened up the season with their best start ever, winning 11 of their first 12 games. But they have returned home from a road trip, and they got swept by the Atlanta Braves. And not only did they get swept, they got taken out behind the woodshed in this series. They gave up a lot of runs. They didn't score a lot of runs. An embarrassing 3-game series against them. They're 2-5 in their last 7 games. This team's a mess right now. They're not hitting. The starting pitching's getting knocked around. What do you see as what's happened to the Mets? Is this something that just was one of those fluky series, or do you think this is going to be a trend here for the next week or so?
They ran into the Braves at the wrong time, and everything's going wrong for them right now. They're not hitting. Defense has been a little shaky. The pitching hasn't been that good. Now on top of that, Jake DeGrom, I think he did it swinging a bat, actually. Hyperextends his right elbow. We don't know how long he's going to be out for. So the Mets are getting snake bit once again. And that good start is giving way to obviously the record's still good right now, but they don't look like a very good baseball team. This, I believe, is a Marquez-Wheeler matchup.
Yes, it is.
And my starting pitching numbers give a pretty big edge to Marquez. I'm not a big Zach Wheeler guy. I think he's mostly a one-pitch guy. And, unfortunately, he's just going to be a back-end guy for the Mets because what else are they going to do? Matt Harvey, by the way, I think could be having a negative impact on the entire baseball team. And I said this on the radio show yesterday, and I know it's like, well, wait, you can't do that because he makes a lot of money, and what happens if he turns around, blah, blah, blah. I suggested that since the Mets aren't going to get anything for him anyway, if you can't trade him, just DFA him and eat the contract. Because Matt Harvey looks like he's done and looks like he could be a guy who is a distraction to the rest of the team with, the fact that he might not be the most team-oriented guy of all time. If there were some doubts on that, by the way, let's just say that, and I said this yesterday on the show, on the Wednesday edition of the Las Vegas Sports Line. Today he goes out there and pitches an inning in relief and gives up 5 runs. He is a train wreck right now. I think it's impacting the whole team. Rockies, to me, look like the side in this game.
Dave, is it harder to cut someone like that with a new manager or easier?
I don't know. It's the general manager. They're gonna have to, look. I mean, if you make a mistake, we screwed up. Okay. What were the Red Sox supposed to do? Keep Pablo Sandoval around for 4 more years because he has signed a big contract? It's like, we got to get him out of here. He's bad for the team at this point, and he can't play. Well, I got news for you. Matt Harvey can't pitch anymore. Okay. Now maybe he gets it together at some point down the road, but right now he stinks. He throws a 94-mile-an-hour straight fastball. He's got nothing. Okay, 94-mile-an-hour straight fastball isn't going to get anybody out in the major leagues. They'll hit that ball all day long. His secondary stuff's no good, and I think his attitude is highly questionable at this point. If you're looking to build a winning team, this is a guy who, I'm sorry, his days, he's done as a Met. And the sooner they realize it, the better off they're going to be. Just make the move. DFA him. Maybe you can work some kind of a deal in the 10 days you've got after you designate a guy for assignment. And if not, then he's just gone, and that's it. And if you have to eat the contract, you eat the contract. It's the way it goes.
Ralph, you look at this, when the Rockies have been getting some great pitching lately, they have allowed 3 runs or less in 7 of their last 8 games. And as you said, Marquez will be on the mound tonight. This is a guy that in his road starts, and most of the Rockies you would expect to have a better road record than being at Coors, obviously. But his ERA is 2.12, and he's got a whip of 1.23. Do you see him continuing that on the road against the Mets after a horrible series against Atlanta?
Well, his problem has been walks this year. He's only lasted 28 innings in 6 starts, so under 5 innings per start. With a 27-16 ratio, that's much higher than he had last year. And last year he came up as a young player and made 29 starts, went 11-7 with a 4.39 ERA. On the opposite side, you look at Wheeler, 4 starts this year, 2-1 record, 4.09 ERA. In Wheeler's 2 starts that he pitched well and won were at Miami and at San Diego, so not the greatest hitting teams, but he had a 16-3 strikeout walk ratio. In his other 2 starts that he lost, he had a 5.5 strikeout walk ratio. So it's been complete hit or miss if he has that strikeout pitch or not.
Yeah, and as Dave said, he's totally going in the wrong direction.
He's he's had a lot of injury problems. That probably had something to do with it. He's a 4 or a 5 and would probably be better off as a bullpen piece, in my opinion. Yeah. He's really not. You got to have 3 pitches to work as a major league starter for the most part. He really doesn't have the 3. So to me, he's going to be just a fringe starter, but he might be a dominant reliever. So if that's what you do, whatever you got to do to get the best out of a guy.
Well, obviously, if they brought him in today to pitch an inning of relief, obviously the game was out of reach anyways. But taking a look at him, I just can't back him. The last 3 starts, you've got a whip of 1.73, and it's climbing every start. I just can't back a guy like that. I got to look at Marquez in this one as well. Heading to Saturday, going to be a good series. You got the Chicago Cubs. They're going to send Tyler Chatwood to the mound. They're going to face St. Louis and Luke Weaver. Many people, Ralph, believe these are the 2 teams that will battle for the National League Central title. I happen to agree with that, and I actually lean to the Cardinals whenever the dust settles this year. But you look at the Cubs, they have been struggling to score runs. They have been held to 3 runs or less in 8 straight starts. And I know the wind plays a factor at Wrigley, but still, the wind isn't playing a factor in 8 straight games. This is a team that's not hitting the baseball right now. How do you see the Cubs going on the road in what is a big series?
Chatwood really is an anomaly. You look at what he's done on the road this year, 1-1 with a 1.50 ERA. But in 12 innings pitched, he's given up 8 hits and he has a 9.11 strikeout walk ratio. Not many guys walk 11 guys in 12 innings and have a 1.5 ERA. So, what can you expect from him? And, you look at the opposite side, Wheeler. Wheeler's got he's on the north side with a 5 ERA. So this is a game where I think the hitters might get healthy, and we'll see what happens weather-wise.
Luke Weaver has struggled a bit recently. He's a very highly regarded Cardinal youngster, but, like a lot of young guys, he's a little bit out of whack right now, and I would have to wait and see a good start from Weaver before I would get on his side. Chatwood, meanwhile, fits the profile of a pitcher I don't like to back because he, as Ralph pointed out, he walks too many guys. And you're begging for trouble in the majors if you walk too many guys. He's getting some strikeouts too, so he's getting some swings and misses, and that's saving him when he's got guys on base. But that's kind of a tightrope job that eventually you fall off the tightrope and get hurt. This is probably a game I'll stay far away from because right now I've got two pitchers whose form I just really can't make heads or tails of at the present time. And you can even say the same thing about the offenses of the teams, which have been kind of hit or miss. A little bit of an edge for the Cubs bullpen if it comes down to that late. So if you're looking for a live betting possibility, if this is a tight game down toward the finish line, you might want to give the Cubs a look.
Yeah, over the last three starts, you've got Chatwood who has more walks than he has hits allowed. He's given a 15 walk. I can't do that. For me, I look at Weaver and I know he's been up and down, but I'm like you. They are very high on this kid. I'm going to look for him to find it on Saturday at St. Louis for me or pass. Moving to Sunday, we've got Boston with Chris Sale on the mound against Texas and Doug Fister. Chris Sale pitched a great game in his last start, but took the loss, and that was the night almost every big name pitcher went down that night.
Yep.
You had Kershaw go down, you had Sale go down, Verlander go down. Sorry, Mark there bringing up that one, but it's a situation where he didn't pitch poorly, and when you had a guy that has a hard luck loss like that, you got to expect the frustration. He's used to it whenever he pitched in Chicago. That happened all the time to him, no run support. But I look for Boston to bounce back with him, Dave, get him some runs this week. And this is a perfect ballpark, team, and pitcher to do it against.
Well, it is. The bad news is that you're going to probably be looking at more than $2, and that means even on a runs line, you'll be looking at minus money there. And so it comes down to one of those situations where if I like the Red Sox here, and I can't look that far in advance as far as what the bullpen conditions will be or anything else. So it's just basically an estimation at this point. But if I like Sale on Sunday, going against the former Red Sox and Doug Fister, who actually is off a good start last time out, it'd be a situation where I'm going to have to find somebody to parlay it with. If there's another big chalk piece where I can, maybe get to even money with two big favorites that look good, I might consider that. But this is not a game that I'll even be able to consider a -1 play in because you're probably looking at Sale Fister, probably about 220 with Sale favored on the road, which I'm not going to do. And it'll probably be -125 or so on the runs line, which means you can't even reduce your liability to an acceptable play to me. So I won't want to play the Red Sox here, but I certainly won't want to play against them.
Ralph, this will be one that if I would look at the run line, and I'm like you, Dave, generally, I want to, if I'm taking a run line, you want to get that in the even money or plus money range.
Plus. Yeah.
But I'll make an exception if I'm on the road because you got to put a little bit of value on having the extra at bat. Because how many times, you've got the lead in the eighth inning and you're sitting there with, a 6-4 lead, you're good, and you give up that meaningless run in the ninth inning and you don't have a chance to get a run back. So if I'm on the road, I will make the exception and lay, but 125 is the cutoff point for me. I won't lay more than 125. And I got to have my numbers got to tell me that I'm looking at my pitcher, in this case, Sale, you expect to give up 1 or 2 runs. He's been solid. And I got to be going against somebody that I'm going to expect to give up 5 or 6 runs. And it's something that I'll go and look at, what team's record is on the run line, obviously. If when they win, are they winning by more than 1 run? And, Ralph, that's the kind of stuff that, you track with, doing the first pitch.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you see the run line records on there for the last 5, 10, 20 days, and And it is easy to glance to look. And then you also have the last 15 game logs. But, looking at this game, Sales allowed 1 earned run or less in 5 of his 7 starts. So that's the kind of pitcher I don't mind backing on the road in the run line situation, because if he's going to be on and pitch, you're going to hold it well. Dave, I've got a question for you, and I don't know if there's an answer to this or not. But, as you said, Pfister was with Boston. Does that help a pitcher knowing how his hitters hit, sitting and watching him hit, going and facing him the next season?
I don't think so.
No, okay.
There's video on every guy in the major leagues, so that's
nothing there.
I don't think there's anything to it.
Where I do think that they're mentally, I think the pitcher that if he was released or traded away, especially when somebody's on the back half of a career, you see somebody, hey, they gave up on me. That first time that he pitches against his old team, I like to look at him because he's going to be pumped up to try to prove that he was still worth it.
The vendetta?
The vendetta, I call it bite the hand that fed you.
And Pfister's pitched well. I mean, look, he's 1-2 with a 2.88 ERA. He lost one game by a run. He lost the other game 8-3, but they gave up 3 unearned runs in that game. So you look at his body of work, he's actually kept Texas into the game.
All right, good stuff, guys. We're going to take a quick break, final break, and when we come back, it's the segment you wait for. It is our best bets. You'll get one from each of us. We'll be back in a moment here on the Wager Talk podcast. Welcome back to the Wager Talk podcast. We're turning for home. It's the home stretch. It's best bet time. We're going to head to the man under the hat, Dave Cokin, and he's going to give us a baseball play for Friday night. We already talked about it, but Dave, before I do, got to give you some kudos on the month of April. We flipped the calendar. It is the month of May, but you had one of the best months any capper has had during April. What a month you had in baseball. Your baseball's just been phenomenal. Hockey thrown in there, some NBA plays here and there.
Well, the NBA plays we won't talk about as much, but
well, it didn't. It didn't hurt the final number.
I only had 3 the whole month. So this isn't all. I want to point this out, and I mentioned this because it's not all about selling picks. I consider the NBA my weakest sport, and when you're going as well as I went in April, whatever I put up was going to sell,
right?
Because I just look at the figures. Here's the. Yeah. But I don't feel great about the NBA, and so I'm not just looking to make sales. I want to win because that's how you make more sales if you keep on winning. And April was really good in baseball, and I think May's going to be just as good. It is one thing that I'd recommend, get the all-access package, because as we get deeper into the season, I like to see lineups before I make the play. And you don't get the lineups early. Sometimes it's 2 or 3 hours before the game, before they come out. Well, I'm not going to have time to write up a promotional blurb and put it as a package, a featured package. It'll only go to the players who have the all-access package, because then it just takes me 2 seconds. I like this, boom, put it in. And if you're all-access, you get it, okay? I guess it gets emailed to you right away.
As soon as it hits the system, you'll be notified.
That's the way to go. And, we got some good offers on those packages, so take advantage of that. Best bet for the show, I'll talk about a game I did talk about, and that's the Rockies-Mets. I mean, the Mets are reeling right now. They might turn it around this weekend against the Rockies. It's possible, but it's also possible this will continue. This is a team facing a lot of adversity right now. I'm not sure the clubhouse situation is as good as it needs to be. And the Rockies come in with a considerable edge in starting pitching with Marquez. I have a power rating for each pitcher, and I can tell you I don't have my power ratings in front of me, but Marquez is considerably better than Wheeler, who is a guy I'm personally just not that high on. So to me, it's not going to be a bad situation as far as the price is concerned. Rockies to get the win on Friday against the Mets.
All right, good stuff. Go to Ralph. Ralph, I know you got a special as well this weekend, and I just want to jump in and add one thing to what Dave said about, the all-access package is the way to go. It baffles me sometimes, obviously, an owner of the site, I look and I see the sales every day, and people will jump on when somebody has a 5% play. They want the big, they want those big plays. If you don't have a big play, they might bypass somebody that is red hot. Like, Dave,
yeah.
And it's one of those things. And then, on Twitter, and we get guys, when you get called touts. Oh, you got big plays. You got to play. Well, that's what you guys keep buying. It amazes me where somebody would rather buy somebody that maybe is only hitting 50%, but they got a 5% play, and they think, I got to do that. And they'll bypass somebody that's red hot, hitting everything that they're putting up because maybe it's only a 4% or a 3%. That just is silly to me. You want to ride the hot hands that are hot and jump on them and get every play they're going. Because I can tell you, I've been betting since I was knee-high to a grasshopper, and we know how old I am, and Dave's even older. When you're winning and you're in a groove, Dave, those games just jump off the page.
Yep.
It looks like you're reading the schedule in 3D. There's games that just slap you in the face, and you're making the plays, and they're going in there. Ride a guy when he's hot like that. That's when you're going to make the most money. You've been going good, Ralph. You've got to play. It's Cinco de Mayo weekend. Tell us about it.
And just one more note on your all-access plays like you're talking about. Example is I have 2 plays this evening, one in the NBA, one in baseball, and I had an afternoon play in baseball on Atlanta, 11-0 winner. You don't put it in your package because it's going to expire and sail and be stale, but if you're part of the all-access, you've got that winner where you're not selling it. And with daytime baseball, there's a lot of guys that don't put those daytime baseball plays on their packages, but all-access customers are getting them. Marco, you talked about all-access. $99 is a great deal for 7 days. It's Cinco de Mayo. It's Derby weekend. I love this weekend. Baseball off to a 70% start this year. I've got a 7-day all-access package, $55. It's valid only Friday or Saturday. You have to sign up Friday or Saturday. It'll expire Saturday. 7 days, all sports, $55. My best bet, I am going to back the Anaheim Angels on Friday with Garrett Richards. Richards got shelled his last game. He gave up 9 runs, 5 earned, 1 2/3 against the Yankees, and that's the kind of guy I'm going to bounce back. The game prior to that, 11 strikeouts, 1 walk. And again, this translates into handicapping. There's a lot of times guys jump off a handicapper because they had one bad day. That's the time I want to be on a good handicapper, is when he had a losing day and he's going to bounce back. Same thing with Richards here, bouncing back off that embarrassing loss. I like him going into Seattle. They're a solid road team. And Seattle, not a right 6-2 run, but then they lost the Paxton game with all those strikeouts. I think that has an effect that'll linger on.
I'm going to go to a game Friday night as well. Now, we're going to take a look at the Toronto-Tampa Bay game. And I'm going to tell you guys, I see the early number on this game already. Normally, I say jump on a line immediately. This one I'm going to tell you no, because I can almost guarantee you're going to have all of the guys that like to look at things and overreact to something. They're going to say, Toronto, they had to play that doubleheader on Thursday, the makeup, and they're at such a disadvantage, and you're going to get a lot of money on Tampa Bay, I think, tomorrow returning home. I'm not buying it. I'm going to go with this. I'm going to take Toronto. You're looking at J.A. Happ on the hill tomorrow. He was a beast in his last 2 starts. He allowed just 3 runs on 9 hits over 14 innings. He went 7 innings each in both of those games. So if the bullpen did get used today, a little bit in some high-scoring games, this is a guy that's going to give you a lot of innings generally when he goes to the mound. And he's pitching well right now. His last 3 starts, listen to this strikeout-to-walk ratio, 27-2. Over the last 3 starts. I'm going to go ahead and go with him. And a little stat for you on Tampa Bay. Their last game, they lost 3-2. This season, when they have scored and allowed 3 runs or less in a game, in their next game, 0-8. And that's one that's this year. Used to go to the Tuesday meetings. There's a guy there, Sean Hess. Everybody knows him around town. He's a guy that the only stats he wanted to ever hear was this year. And he would ride any streak that somebody found that had some validity and ride it until it lost. Well, you know what? He only lost one bet on each of those series. How many before it goes? So I'm giving you one right here. And, Sean, if you're listening, jump on it. Tampa Bay, 0-8 this year when they give up or score, and in the same game, 3 runs or less. That's it for this week. That's a wrap. I want to thank you guys for tuning in to the WagerTalk podcast. I want to thank my partners in crime here in the studio, Ralph Michaels and Dave Cokin. Also want to thank our guest tonight, Matthew Holt. Always great having him on, VP of Business Development for CG Technologies. Again, you can follow Matt on Twitter at Matthew Holt VP. Thanks to Mark Seidel for making sure we sound good and not muting our mics when we make Houston jokes. And shout out to Johnny Detroit. He's the guy that gets these podcasts up, all the different places that you can listen to it. You can subscribe to our channel on iTunes. We're also on iHeart. And tell your friends about the podcast. Share it. Spread the word. We'll be back next week. I'm Marco D'Angelo. Until then, let's cash some tickets.